I show up and only to find out that basically the peas that they're growing, it's just gotten too hot and the peas are dying because it's too hot.
That was a plant nobody could diagnose, and it didn't have a disease at all. Tomatoes alone can get more than 50 diseases, and almost all of them look identical. So before you treat for the wrong thing, here's how to work out what you're actually dealing with. Stay to the end, and I'll put the whole checklist on one screen so you can screenshot it. Because before you treat anything, there are 4 things to rule out. And one of these 4 fools almost everybody, including people who've grown for 20 years. There's also one rule at the end that stops you ripping out a bed you never needed to touch.
So the first thing you want to do is you want to, when you're uncertain, the first thing you want to do is actually make sure that you do have a disease, and you want to rule out the basics. And I've seen this happen before where somebody thinks that they have a disease, and I show up and only to find out that basically the peas that they're growing, it's just gotten too hot and the peas are dying because it's too hot. So the first thing you want to look for is sunlight. So vegetables really want 6 to 8 hours of sunlight per day. Otherwise, they might start to discolor, they might start to wither, they might be stunted in growth. There's lots of ways that this can show up. They might not photosynthesize, which means that you'll have a lot of yellowing of leaves, which is one of the signs of a lot of different diseases. So you want to make sure your plants are getting 6 to 8 hours of sunlight if they're vegetables, with the only exception that there are greens out there, some of the spinaches and lettuces and some of those sorts of things. Those can get a little bit less than 6 to 8 hours of sunlight, but generally 6 to 8 hours is a good rule of thumb. So if you go outside at 9 a.m., noon, and 3 p.m. and your plants are in sunlight, you know that your plants have at least 6 hours of sunlight. So that's an easy way to tell if your plants are getting the 6 to 8 hours of sunlight. You'd be surprised how many people don't take the measurement and they just think, well, it looks sunny outside where I planted my garden, and they don't actually measure how many hours of sunlight it gets. And so it's really that easy. Go out every couple of hours and just double check that your vegetables are in sunlight, and then take the total number of hours that they are in sunlight. So that's the first thing. Are they getting sunlight, which means that they would be photosynthesizing? The second thing is, are they getting enough water? So some of the diseases are called wilt, right? You have bacterial wilt, you have fusarium wilt, and so these are diseases that look like they might be a water issue sometimes. And so the first thing you want to rule out is that your plants are getting enough water. So generally, when we're talking about vegetable gardens, we're talking about 1 inch of water per week. So if you are lucky enough to live in an area where you are getting at least 1 inch of water per week of rain, then your plant definitely have enough water. And you can check this by looking up climate data online. And I think if you just type into Google climate data and then the name of your city, up will come this website, and it's something like usclimatedata.com or something, and you can check how many inches of precipitation you get per month. And if you get 4 inches per month, then you definitely get enough water. And if you get less than that, then you're going to want to water. And when it becomes really hot out, let's say over 80 degrees, you need more like 2 inches of water per week. And so most places don't get 8 inches of rain in the peak summer, and that's why most people are watering their vegetable gardens. So that's a good rule of thumb. So are you getting enough water? And then the third basic is your soil. And so you want to rule out that soil is not the issue. In the slides for the class, there is a drawing which shows what nutrient deficiencies look like in plants. And so that is something that is in your soil that can be addressed. And so those things, generally, your whole leaf is it's maybe turning purple, or the veins are turning one color and the rest of the leaf is turning a different color. And so it's a nutrient deficiency if all the leaves start to kind of do the same thing. But generally diseases will start to happen, and the leaves will be mottled or blotchy or spotty, or they will deform. So those are things that you know are diseases. So that's a difference between whether it's a nutrient deficiency and whether it's a disease. And the other thing you just want to make sure of with your soil is that you have well-draining soil where the water is able to move through the soil and take nutrients up into the plant. So and there's one more that's not listed here, and that's perhaps this idea of temperature. So it's possible that it is too hot or too cold for your vegetables, and therefore they are either stunted or they're not producing fruit, or they are getting, you're watering at the peak hour of sunlight and you're burning your plants. So those are other things that you want to rule out before you decide whether or not you have a disease. So that's what you want to rule out first, because if you're doing those things correctly, then you know that whatever issue you have is a disease. So the next part of that question. So how else to deal with this uncertainty? So there's so many diseases, they all look alike. What do you do? Well, there are lots of different resources, and I listed some in course materials. My favorite is that book, The Organic Guide to Pest and Disease Management. It has tons of images. It has every plant, every vegetable plant. They go through and they list every disease that could happen in that plant and what symptoms the plant will show. And so a resource like that, you can go through and you can say, okay, what I would recommend doing, you look in the book and you say, okay, there are 8 diseases that this plant could have. And then you read through the descriptions and you start to rule out. You're kind of like this investigator, right? You start to rule out the things that don't make sense. And so you want to be really specific about your disease. And so are your plants curling, like are the leaves curling, or are there blotches, or, so basically in those disease descriptions, it'll have those different descriptions. So you basically rule out the things that it definitely isn't. So now you have, let's say you have 5 different diseases, and you're like, it sounds like it could be any one of these 5. It's not exact with any of these. And that's very typical. I just have to say, that it's very typical that you'll read through all of those descriptions, and you'll still be confused. So what you want to do then is you say, okay, what's the worst case disease on this list? And now, is there any way to rule it out? Read that description really closely. Is there any way to rule out that disease? And keep doing that until you now come down to maybe you have 3 diseases. And now whatever your worst case is, that's what you want to treat for, just in case. And the only caveat to that I would say is if your worst case is like you need to rip out all of your plants right now because this is a soil-borne disease and it can stay in the soil for years to come, and you want to get any evidence of this thing out of your garden, if that's worst case, and then best case scenario is that you just have a watering problem, I would do a little bit more research to make sure that it's the disease before you rip out all your plants. So bring in some kind of specialist to help you. And that's the next step, basically, is if you're having trouble identifying what you have, there are some really great tools available for you, especially if you're in the United States. And I'm not sure.
So here's what to actually do. Before you treat anything, rule out the 4 basics. Sunlight. Go out at 9, noon, and 3 and count the hours. Vegetables want 6 to 8. Water, an inch a week, 2 inches when it's over 80 degrees. Soil, and here's the one that saves you. A nutrient deficiency shows a pattern, purpling or veins one color, and it's consistent across the leaves. A disease is mottled, blotchy, deformed. And temperature. Too hot or too cold looks like a lot of things. Only once those are ruled out are you actually looking at a disease. Then narrow it down like an investigator and treat for the worst case still on your list. What not to do? Don't rip out your plants on a guess. If your worst case means destroying the whole bed, get a specialist to confirm it first. Now imagine having that kind of answer for every problem in your garden. The pests, the soil, the watering, the timing, all of it. That's exactly what we built the Superfood Garden Summit for. 15 of the most trusted growers alive, each handing you the one thing that changed everything for them. And it's completely free. Here's a look. So what's actually inside the Superfood Garden Summit? Here's a look. Across 4 themes, you'll learn it all. Building living soil, growing abundance, turning your harvest into everyday meals and remedies, and using your garden to nourish your health and the people you love.
You'll learn from 15 of the most trusted teachers in regenerative gardening, herbal medicine, and home food production. Names like Charles Dowding, Ocean Robbins, Seja Popham, Kami McBride, Matt Powers, and many more, each sharing one practical, transformative lesson. Hosted by Denise Bynes, owner of Grow Your Own Vegetables, on a mission to help 1 million new gardeners grow their own food.
And you can watch all of it free together in your own 48-hour window. Go to growyourownvegetables.org/summit and start watching today.